Hi everyone, Leanne here from Jada Blossom, and I have a fun Christmas card to share with you today. Hey, so I'm using Jada Blossom's Build-A-Booth Christmas add-ons, their Build-A-Booth die, their Build-A-Booth Gnome add-ons, their Gnomes for Sale stamp set, their Reindeer Feed stamp set, their Gnome Dies sign add-ons, and I'm using P13 stamping pad skin tones along with Candy Cane Lane 6-inch in pad and odds and ends. And I did assemble these gnomes on that assembly video, so check that out. I'm using the Gnome Dies 2 and Jada Blossom's Gnome Dies as well. And there's my gnome that I put together on that Gnome Dies 2 video, so, check that one out. And I also put together these little Christmas lights previously, and I have those gnomes as well from that gnome add-ons for the Build-A-Booth assembly video, so check that out. So I have a piece of paper tray ink cardstock in white, cut at 4.25 by 11, scored at 5.5 inches vertically, so vertical fold A2. Now I'm going to add some paper to the front of my card, and this is 1/8 of an inch smaller than an A2 sized card, and I'm just going to add that background on. It's just a little snowflake background. Now on the inside, I'm going to add a strip of paper from that same pad, and it's just one of their border papers. Here we go. It's like 1 1/4 inches or something like that. Just big enough to, fit those borders, trim out those borders nicely. So I did cut out the Jada Blossom Build-A-Booth dies with paper tray ink white cardstock. And I'm going to assemble this booth with some ATG tape and some Barely Art glue here and there. So I'm adding the thickest plank on the top piece. There, and I do weight it down. And on the bottom, I'm going to be adding on 5 of these shorter planks, but I'll be adding them vertically with some ATG tape and some Barely Art glue around the ends. Using my reverse tweezers and all that jazz, and I'm just going to line them all up. Now, I don't know, I've said this in videos before, but the fact that I make all of the assembly videos for Jada Blossom, I don't necessarily use everything that I assemble on my cards from that release, so they build up. And I've got a lot of them. So that's why I don't necessarily show you the assembly of certain things. Like I said, you could watch me, assemble them on the assembly videos. I'm just trying to save some time in my videos, as well as the fact that literally I have them coming out the wazoo. So I've got to use these die cuts up. So I'm just going to add in all of my little planks. I love these booths. I just think they're so cute. And there we have it. And then the skinniest plank I cut at a paper tray ink white cardstock too, and I'll be adding that in a minute. So now I'm adding on some odds and ends from Doodlebug. This is from the Candy Cane Lane odds and ends set. And I'm just going to add in 2 of the trees. And then this cute little snowman as well. And I'm just going to layer them all up, just so there's like fun grouping on the inside of the card. I'm going to add in 3 hearts as well. These are always included in those odds and ends. And it's nice to use them on the inside of cards, I find. So I'm going to use those in a visual triangle. And there we have it, and I do weight it down. Now I'm going to stamp a sentiment from that Reindeer Feed stamp set in VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink. Use my Misty as per usual. So this will say Merry Christmas on the inside. And I thought that this was those gnome dies, the Build-A-Booth gnome add-ons that I have, were all kind of put together in Christmas colors, so I thought it'd be perfect for a Christmas card. So now I'm using the Gnome Dies sign add-ons, and I'm going to stamp a sentiment from the Gnomes for Sale stamp set onto that, and that is paper tray ink craft cardstock, and I'll stamp it in VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink as well. So it's going to say gnomes for sale. And there we go. There's my little sign. And then this is the sign for the top of my booth. And I'm going to be using a stamp from that same reindeer feed stamp set. And it's just going to say Elf Workshop. So kind of a fun little sign because it's like this elf is displaying his wares. And his wares are all the little gnomes, right? And the elf happens to be a gnome himself. So it's just a cute little look. So I'm going to add that on as well. And I do stamp that twice just to get a nice sharp clear image. And I'm going to put that off to the side to dry. So I'm going to trim off that overhang with a pair of scissors there. And I'm pulling out my Secure White Jelly Roll pen in a number 10 to add a few highlights. Remember, you have to let these dry along with that sentiment because it's easily smudged, right? So I'm just going to add on all of those little highlights for fun. And then I will pull out a Sakura black glaze pen to dot the eyes and the coal buttons on this little snowman as well. And there's my black glaze pen. And this one especially has to dry. The nice thing is it does add some dimension and shine, right? But remember, you got to let it dry. And there it is. Now I'm going to finish assembling my little booth. I'm going to add on the skinniest plank. And I like to add that kind of at an angle, right? Kind of fun. And then I'm taking that same black glaze pen and I'm going to color in all those nail holes. And these are going to be my little nail heads. I find this is the easiest way. You could obviously, put in the little cuts or you could add brads. I've done that before. But this is a nice way to do it and keep things nice and flat. So I'm just going to color in all these little nail heads with that glaze pen. And then remember, you're going to have to let that dry a little bit because it also can smear if you're not careful. And showing you my glaze pen again, there it is. And now I am going to assemble my little sign. I'm just adding on a pure poppy string to this. Whoops, and it hit me. I didn't put the glue all over that string. And I'm going to add that to my sign. So I'll have a fun little sign for the booth as well. And I will weight that down with an acrylic block. Now I'm going to layer up my other sign. I cut that out of that Doodlebug Candy Cane Lane 6-inch pad. And then I'm adding it to a Paper Trank white cardstock base. I'm just making sure it's lined up and I will weight it down. Now I have this fun American Crafts white glitter tape. And I'm going to add a strip of it to the bottom of my cardstock here. Just so it looks like it's got a snow on the bottom, just so it has ground. Now I have a lot of this glitter tape that I never use, so I'm trying to use stuff. So that's why. You could use a strip of white glitter cardstock if you have it. Now I'm going to get things in place here. So I'm figuring out where my little gnome is going to go. So I'm adding a little bit of ATG tape to the front of the beard and to the back of the hat. There it is. Then I'm going to figure out where my sign's going to go. And I want that to kind of go behind the hat a little bit as well. So I'm going to add some ATG tape to the back, and then I will slip it in place, kind of on an angle. There, so we've got Elf Workshop. So we're getting there. Now I have my cute little banner of gnomes. There it is, and I'm going to glue these down to the bottom of my fun booth. And then I do have two separate gnomes that I put together. One a different way. Remember, you can watch me assemble that on the Build a Booth Gnome add-ons assembly video. It was just a different way to give the little girl gnome a face. And there is my string of lights that I used the same colors, right? Green, pink, and yellow. and red from Paper Tray Ink cardstock there. Everything else was American Crafts cardstock. I'm going to slip this little string of lights behind what I've got going on there. There it is. So I'm just going to make sure it's stuck down. Oops, I've got some adhesive there. That's what the adhesive eraser is for, right? Erasing off old adhesive. Now I have these cute two little gnomes, and I'm going to have this little guy holding them, kind of like, look, come by my gnomes, right? So I'm going to add some of this scrapbook adhesives, foam squares to the back. Just peeling off that release paper, and then I'll have him kind of holding them, one in each hand. I'm going to have one kind of at one angle. You'll see that I used some white pigment ink around his beard. That's on that Gnome Dies 2, right? He's got a fluffy beard, that one. It's just my way of making the mustache stand out against the beard. I find it works really well. I use Close to My Heart White Daisy ink, but any pigment ink would do. Now I'm taking some Stampin' Up! Dimensionals, and I'm going to add on two little hands cut from P13 Stamping Pad Skin Tones. Remember, that's available in the Jada Blossom store. And there we are. And isn't that fun? So now I'm going to add on some ATG tape to the back of my whole little design here. And I'm also going to pull out some score tape, just so I can put some score tape along those two little, I don't know what that would be called, the little support beams. So I'm just going to pull off those two pieces. And then I'm going to set up my cute little booth on my paper here, just getting it straight. Oops. Getting it as straight as I can. And I will weight it down. Now I still have to add on my Gnomes for Sale little sign. I'm going to glue that one down and get it in place. And there it is. And for the little nail head, I'm going to use this thing. It's called Visions of Sugar Plums, but really it's just a tiny little dot from Doodlebug, and I'm going to use that kind of like a nail that's holding it in place. So this is kind of like an aqua one. And then I'm pulling out these shape sprinkles. These are called rainbow hearts, and I'm going to add little pink ones to all of the little gnomes. So on the little girls' dresses, I'm going to add a little pink heart on their chest. And then the boys will get a pink heart on their hat. And then I'm going to do the same thing to the two that the gnome is holding. I'm going to add two more. There they are. And it, adds a little shine, but also some more pink, right? And there we go. Isn't that cute? I just think it turned out adorable. So thank you so much for stopping by. Be sure to hop on over to the Jada Blossom blog, Be Inspired by the Team, the Jada Blossom store, to get your hands on these amazing products. And thanks as always for watching. I appreciate it. And make sure you're a follower. Bye, everybody.